A shocking ambulance crash in India's Karnataka was caught on a CCTV camera.
The ambulance lost control on the wet road and rammed into the toll gate, killing 4 people on the spot. More details on this later in the news. Good evening. I'm CJ Hero.
And I'm Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. And now for the headlines.
Batasang Pambansa Complex imposes a lockdown starting Thursday noon in preparation for President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s State of the Nation address on Monday. National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council assumes the functions of the National Task Force Against COVID-19. At least 9 dead after a ferry sinks in Indonesia. 6-time Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe sworn in as crisis hit Sri Lanka's new president. And the World Health Organization is set to decide whether monkeypox warrants highest alert level.
Former Presidents Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo and Joseph Estrada have confirmed their attendance at President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s first State of the Nation address. Meanwhile, preparations for Monday's SONA are in their final stages, according to the leadership of the House of Representatives. Weng de la Fuente reports.
The Batasang Pambansa Complex is on lockdown beginning 12 noon today and will open again on Monday, July 25, in time for the formal opening of the 19th Congress and the first State of the Nation address of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. The House of Representatives leadership guarantees that preparations for Monday's SONA are in their final stages. The lockdown was imposed to disinfect the complex as part of the strict observance of health standards. All attendees will enter through the north wing lobby of the Batasan building after they secure a clearance from the PSG at the south wing lobby. To secure clearance from PSG, the attendees should present their health declaration, vaccination card, and hard copy of the negative result of their RT-PCR test, along with the SONA invitations for VIPs and the SONA accreditation ID issued by the House of Representatives Secretariat. The media will use the 4th floor of the South Wing Annex building in Batasan Complex. Former Presidents Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo and Joseph Estrada have confirmed their attendance on Monday's SONA. Vice President Sara Duterte and members of the Diplomatic Corps have also acknowledged the invitation. But House Secretary General Leandro Mendoza said they have not yet received a response from former Presidents Rodrigo Duterte and Fidel Ramos and former Vice President Leni Robredo. The House leadership said they had invited 1,300 guests for President Marcos's SONA, 70% of whom have confirmed their attendance. President Marcos is expected to deliver his speech around 4 o'clock in the afternoon on July 25 before the joint session of the Senate and House of Representatives, which also officially starts the first regular session of the 19th Congress. Weng de la Fuente reporting for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Lawmakers urge President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to announce the appointment of a permanent health secretary in his State of the Nation address on Monday, July 25. What else do the senators expect from the president's first SONA? Well, let's hear them from this report of Mean Corvera.
Dissenters want to hear President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s plan for rebuilding the Philippines from COVID-19 as well as other directions his administration will take when he delivers his first State of the Nation address on Monday. Senator Francis Tolentino says various sectors have been affected by the global pandemic and there is a need for the President to lay down his plans to address their concerns.
COVID situation natin ngayon,
Opo.
kung ano yung pwedeng, alam ko, magkakaroon ng pagbabago sa mga IATF regulations. Kagaya nung sinabi nyo kanina, siya yung mamumuna ng bakuna. At siguro panlima, yung sa ekonomiya natin. Dapat pa nga, yun sa una, yung kung ano yung dapat gawin ng mga bagong fiscal policies at gawin ng finance cluster na sa ganun maibsan yung nararamdaman inflation, hindi lang naman sa atin.
Tolentino suggests that President Marcos should mention his administration's plan for a mass second booster campaign and his appointment of a permanent head of the DOH amid various health issues plaguing the country.
Tama yun, para nasa ganun magamit lahat yung bakuna at saka siguro talagang mabigyan na ng karagdagang proteksyon yung ating mga kababayan.
Tolentino also awaits the President's foreign policy direction.
Wala pa tayong gasino naririnig pero makarinig na tayo kasi marami namang makikinig ng mga ambassadors doon sa zona tungkol sa foreign policy. Kung saan ano yung magiging direksyon kasi nung si Pangulong Duterte noon ang diniin ng kagad yung independent foreign policy.
Senator Christopher Bongo, for his part, expects to hear the administration's strategy for strengthening the healthcare system, accelerating disaster and calamity response, and creating infrastructure to generate job opportunities for Filipinos. Senator Lauren Legarda wishes that President's pandemic recovery plan would align with the addressing climate change. Legarda also looks forward to hearing the President's policy reforms on health, food security, economy, and human rights. Senator Sani Angara meanwhile said that many are happy to hear Marcos' plans to strengthen the private-public sector partnership, citing the President's inaugural speech. He said Marcos has given hope to Filipinos who now wait for how the administration will specifically work toward the country's recovery. Senator Alan Peter Cayetano expects President Marcos to be honest about the real situation of the country. He said the President should not worry since the problems the country is facing are completely inevitable.
Three burning issues. First, of course, is values. There's a crisis of values, of what's important, how we do things, etc. Two, COVID pa rin talaga. And then three, yung taas ng presyo. So, quoting former Socio-Economic Secretary Habito, PTK, taas ng presyo, kawalan ng trabaho, maliit na kita. So the problem is most of this is caused externally, except for the values, di ba, nasa atin yan. But yung COVID, wala namang may kasalanan yan sa Pilipinas, dumating sa atin yan. Yung pagtaas ng presyo, hindi mo masisisi sa isang administrasyon, isang tao. Hindi natin kontrolado yun, but how do we react?
Mayan Corvera reporting for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Militant groups describe the deployment of security personnel to Monday's State of the Nation address as overkill. In response, the Philippine National Police has defended the security measures it has laid down. Vin Pascua reports.
The Philippine National Police has defended the decision to deploy around 22,000 security personnel for President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s first State of the Nation. In an interview with Net25's morning show Kada Umaga, PNP spokesperson Colonel Jean Fajardo stressed that such security arrangement is not only intended for the President, but also for everybody. She explained that the 22,000-strong security force is composed not only of PNP personnel. It is a contingent of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, the Philippine Coast Guard, Metropolitan Manila Development Authority or MMDA, and medical personnel from the Department of Health.
Nating linawin yun kung kabuuan na 22,000 ay pinagsama na nga po yan ng mga components po na iba-ibang government agencies. At yung pong 22,000 na bilang po na yan ay hindi lamang po i-deploy dyan sa paligid po ng Batasan Complex. Yan po ay kasama na po doon sa mga peripheral areas, pati na rin po doon sa mga boundaries natin na particularly coming from the Central Luzon at Southern Tagalog. At yan po ay sisiguraduhin po natin na makakapagbigay po tayo ng maayos at kwalidad na security and public safety services. Hindi lamang po dyan sa area po ng Batasan Complex, pati na rin po sa ibang mga areas na papasok po ng Metro Manila.
Although the PNP has not received any threat regarding Monday's SONA, the police say they will not be complacent. Instead, the authorities vow to increase their vigilance to ensure the safe and peaceful conduct of the nationally significant event.
Sa ngayon, wala pa po tayong natatanggap o namomonitor na any credible and serious threat para po i-disrupt itong nalalapit na zona. But just the same, hindi po tayo nagkakampante at patuloy po tayo nakikipag-ugnayan sa ibang mga ahensya ng gobyerno para po ma-validate at ma-confirm yung mga mangilan-ngilan po natin mga raw information na natatanggap.
This is Vin Pascua reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council has formally assumed the functions of the National Task Force against COVID-19. In a statement, the NDRRMC said the transfer of NTF's duties to the agency is part of the government's effort to streamline its pandemic response. The NDRRMC added that all queries regarding NTF should be directed now to the NDRRMC, while questions about the vaccination program must be addressed to the Department of Health. Former President Rodrigo Duterte created the NTF against COVID-19 at the height of the pandemic to oversee the operations of the national response. The NTF implemented the National Action Plan against COVID-19 through the government's pandemic policy body or policy-making body, the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases. Earlier this week, DOH officer in charge Maria Rosario Vergeire said the government would also reorganize the IATF.
The Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao has opened a one-stop vaccination site inside the compound of its government center in Cotabato City. The Department of Health shared in a Facebook post that the BARM government, in collaboration with the Ministry of Health, installed COVID-19 vaccination and routine immunization hubs in the said one-stop shop. With the project, more people in the region can easily access vaccination and routine immunization services for the protection of the community. The DOH said this one-stop shop does not only cater to COVID-19 vaccination and routine immunization, it also provides services similar to Animal Bite Treatment Centers, or ABTC. In her remarks, Officer in Charge Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergeire thanked all the partners and stakeholders who have helped bring vaccines closer to people. She also expressed gratitude to all the healthcare workers and frontliners who continuously help the BARM government achieve its vaccination targets.
The Philippine National Police is drafting security measures for the school opening on August 22. The move is in response to President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s directive on ensuring the safety of the students, teachers, and school workers once the classes resume. As the government plans to return to 100% face-to-face classes, the PNP expects more people to go out, which offenders can take advantage of. The officer in charge, Lieutenant General Vicente Dano Jr., said PNP will increase police visibility in areas like marketplaces. Dano also appealed to the public to always adhere to health protocols like wearing of face masks, frequent disinfection, and observance of social distancing. The PNP will meet with the Department of Education to thrash out the action plans for ordinary day and emergency situations.
An education official is pushing for the use of English and Filipino as a medium of instruction in schools. Education Undersecretary Epimaco Densing III suggests using regular English and Filipino as a medium for instruction and the mother tongue as an exception to the rule. Under the K-12 program, that mother tongue is required to be used from kindergarten to grade 3. Densing admits that a law should be enacted for his proposed adjustment. He said he had already discussed the matter with Vice President and Education Secretary Sara Duterte. Meanwhile, Densing informed that the DepEd has finished reviewing the programs for kindergarten up to grade 10. He said they will propose a provision that will be laid down in the coming days. Up next, Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi resigns as his coalition government collapses. Ukraine's First Lady urges U.S. Congress to send more weapons for its fight against Russia. And 9 dead and 4 missing after a ferry sinks in Indonesia. These and more when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Abangan sa Lutong Daza.
Favorite natin lahat, Pinoy Merienda Classics. Busog sa sarap, busog sa tawanan kasamang walang kakupas-kupas na si Bayani Agbayani.
Espesyal ang ating handa. Meron tayong pansit gamit ang 4 kinds of noodles, pork siomai,
Turon with a twist at masarap na ginumis. Saan ka pa?
kita-kits sa Lutong Daza.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. At least 9 bodies have been retrieved after a ferry sank off the coast of an Indonesian island on Monday due to bad weather. The boat was carrying 77 passengers and crew on board as it traveled to Indonesia's Halmahera Island. It capsized in waters off nearby Ternate Island, prompting a search and rescue operation for 13 missing people. In a statement, the Ternate Search and Rescue Agency reported that 4 bodies were found on Wednesday evening and 5 bodies on the 4th day of the search. With 4 people still missing, rescuers say the search continues. Marine accidents are common in Indonesia, an archipelago of around 17,000 islands, as people often rely on ferries and small boats to travel around despite poor safety standards.
Sri Lanka's 6th-time Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe was sworn in today as president of the crisis-hit South Asian nation ahead of forming a unity government. Wickremesinghe, aged 73, was elected by legislators on Wednesday. He took his oath of office before Chief Justice Jayantha Jayasuriya at the tightly guarded Parliament complex. Sri Lanka's police chief and top military brass stood behind the new president as the oath was administered in the presence of Parliamentary Speaker Mahinda Abeyewardena. The brief ceremony was due to be broadcast live on local television, but was inexplicably cut off just before the swearing-in got underway. Officials said an investigation into the unexpected breakdown had been launched. According to official sources, the new leader is expected to form a cabinet not exceeding 30 ministers to steer the country out of its worst economic crisis since gaining independence from Britain. Wickremesinghe's presidency was met with some disappointment as a sullen crowd of 200 people protested his election. Feelings of burnout have been heightened by despair over the election results. Damitha Abeyratne, a prominent Sri Lankan actress who has been a regular fixture at the protest site, said they lost. The whole country lost. Meanwhile, thousands of people lined up outside the immigration office seeking passports to escape Sri Lanka's economic crisis. Every day, about 3,000 people hand in their papers and 15,000 rupees, or $42 to obtain travel documents. The office is running 24 hours a day, 6 days a week, to try to cope with the demand.
ඊට පස්සේ මට හිතුණා රට යන්න ඕනේ කියලා. මොකද මෙහි සිටුේෂන් එකත් එක්ක දැන් ඉන්න බෑ අමාරුයි. ඇත්තටම මනුස්සන්ට ඇත්තටම ජීවත් වෙන්න අමාරුයි. බඩු මිල වැඩි, ඉන්ධන නැහැ, තෙල් නැහැ. සැලරි හරියට ගෙවන්නේ නැහැ. සැලරි නැහැ. ඒ නිසා ඇත්තටම මම යන්න ඕනේ කියලා හිතුවා.
Coming today passport renew. Now 9 hour 10 hour here. Very big problem, no food, nothing, no sleeping. I don't know, today passport give me, no, I don't know. Very big problem.
Sri Lanka continues to suffer lengthy power blackouts, and the country's 22 million people have been enduring shortages of fuel, food, and medicines for months.
Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi resigned today after his National Unity coalition government crumbled. The internationally respected 74-year-old formally handed his resignation to President Sergio Mattarella, whose role now is to guide Italy out of the crisis. Draghi is a former head of the European Central Bank. In 2021, he was parachuted into the premiership as Italy wrestled with a pandemic and ailing economy. On Wednesday, he had attempted to save the government, urging his squabbling coalition to stop political games for the sake of the country. But efforts to bring Italy's fractious parties to heel failed when 3 parties in his coalition refused to participate in a confidence vote. France's European Affairs Minister Laurence Boone believes Draghi's resignation would open a period of uncertainty and mark the loss of a pillar of Europe. Draghi's downfall comes despite recent polls suggesting most Italians wanted him to stay at the helm until the scheduled general election next May.
The outgoing British leader was given a standing ovation from Conservative MPs at the end of Wednesday's afternoon session for his mission largely accomplished role. The former
Mission largely accomplished. For now, I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank all the wonderful staff of the House of Commons. I want to thank all my friends and colleagues. I want to thank my rival friend opposite, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank everybody here, and hasta la vista, baby.
The former Prime Minister warned his successor to always remember to check your rearview mirror. Johnson also urged the contenders to continue his outspoken backing for Ukraine and stay close to the Americans. Meanwhile, Conservative rivals Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss will duel in the coming weeks to become the next Prime Minister after the party's lawmakers held a concluding vote. Former Finance Minister Sunak again led the field with 137 votes in Tory MP's fifth and final ballot. The crucial race for second place was narrowly won by Foreign Secretary Truss on 113 votes against 105 for Trade Minister Penny Mordaunt. In a hint of support for Truss's Thatcherite platform, Boris advised his successor to cut taxes and deregulate where you can to make this the greatest place to live and invest. The MP's results will be announced on September 5, with Britain already guaranteed to get either its first Prime Minister of color or its third woman leader.
The elections will most likely be a tough fight between far-right re-electionist President Jair Bolsonaro and leftist former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, the overwhelming favorite in the polls. But center-leftist Ciro Gomes, a former ally of Lula da Silva, launches his candidacy for the Brazilian presidential elections in October. He is running third and trailing in the polls, although observers say he could influence a possible second round.
Tenho trabalhado nesse ponto, com todas as suas diferenças, eles são muito parecidos. Mudam apenas configurações, simbologias e emoções do mesmo modelo. Eu procuro ser completamente diferente. Eu quero unir o país em torno de um novo projeto e não em torno da minha personalidade. Tenho trabalhado.
Gomes, known for his impetuous character and fine oratory, is a veteran politician. He was mayor of Fortaleza, governor of Ceará, deputy and twice minister, a trajectory that has taken him through 7 parties of the parliamentary arc. After Gomes, Lula will be made official as a candidate at an event in Sao Paulo, in which the former president will be absent because he is on tour in the Northeast. Bolsonaro will launch his candidacy on Sunday in Rio de Janeiro. All candidates must be made official between this Wednesday and August 15.
South America's Mercosur trade bloc has declined a request by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to address its upcoming summit, according to host Paraguay.
El Mercosur toma sus determinaciones por consenso. No hubo el consenso para poder tener esa comunicación. Por lo tanto, en este momento ya se le comunicó a la contraparte de Ucrania que en esas circunstancias no hay condiciones de poder hablar como Mercosur con el presidente de Ucrania. Ya fue comunicada.
Thank you.
Bloc members Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, and Paraguay failed to reach an agreement on Zelensky's request made to the host country last week. This was as per Deputy Foreign Minister Raul Cano, who declined to say which states were against it. Zelensky has addressed several national parliaments as well as regional and international forums since the Ukraine war, including NATO, the G7, the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, and even the Cannes Film Festival. The Ukrainian leaders spoke to Paraguay's President Mario Abdo Benitez last week, asking to be allowed to address a Mercosur summit following a ministerial meeting of the bloc. Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro, whose presence at the summit has not been confirmed, has said his country would remain neutral over Russia's war on Ukraine.
Ukrainian First Lady Olena Zelenska appeals to members of the U.S. Congress for air defense systems and weapons in her country's fight against Russia. In an address at the U.S. Capitol in Washington, Zelenska asks for weapons that she says would protect one's home and save children.
Я зараз прошу річ, яку я б ніколи не хотіла просити. Я прошу у вас зброю. Зброю не для того, щоб нести війну на чужу землю, а щоб захистити свій дім і право прокидатися у ньому живими. Я прошу у вас протиповітряну оборону, щоб ракети не вбивали дітей у їхніх візочках.
The head of the Central Intelligence Agency said Russia's experience in Ukraine is affecting China's calculations on when and how, not whether, to invade Taiwan. Appearing at the Aspen Security Forum, CIA Director Bill Burns said China likely saw in Ukraine that you don't achieve quick, decisive victories with underwhelming force. He played down speculation that Chinese President Xi Jinping could move on Taiwan after a key Communist Party meeting later this year, but said the risks become higher the further into this decade that you get.
I wouldn't underestimate, President Xi's determination to assert China's control, the People's Republic of China's control over Taiwan. I think I think he's determined to ensure that his military has the capability to undertake such an action should he decide to move in that direction. I think the risks of that become higher, it seems to us, the further into this decade that you get.
The head of the CIA also said that China was unsettled when looking at Russia's 5-month-old war in Ukraine, which he characterized as a strategic failure for Russian President Vladimir Putin, as he had hoped to topple the Kyiv government within a week. He also said in a live interview with NBC News that China has likely learned that it has control or to control the information space and do everything it can to shore up its economy against the potential for sanctions. In line with previous U.S. assessments, Burns said that the United States does not believe Beijing is offering military support to Russia, despite rhetorical backing. He said China has stepped up purchases of Russian energy, but appears careful about not incurring Western sanctions.
A man in his 20s was fatally shot by French tactical forces after killing 5 members of his family in a house in Duva, eastern France. The man had been holed up in the house since Tuesday night. Witnesses recall how the small neighborhood of only 1,000 inhabitants was cordoned off. They say the tragedy is very disturbing. Next on Mata ng Agila International. WHO to decide on sounding the highest alarm on monkeypox. 14 cities go on red alert as the heat wave in Italy intensifies. And Russia resumes gas flows to Germany after Nord Stream maintenance. More stories coming up when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Naman ng episode natin ngayong gabi. Busog na ang mga tiyan natin. Busog pa tayo sa mga kwentong bida. Ang award-winning na recipe na ito ang naging foundation ng kanyang food business na tinatawag niyang Tapa-diction.
Tumikim kami sa iba't ibang nag-offer ng mga tapa. Sa sweet side sila Hallows. So gumawa kami ng version na salty side naman.
Ang pinakamalaking challenge po niya, wala siyang mga kamay. Siguradong taas kamay kayo sa pagkamangha sa kwento ni Maricel Apatan.
Pinag-aralan ko po ito kung papaano ko makapag-umpisa, matulungan ko yung sarili ko para makagawa po ako ng iba't ibang trabaho.
At kung kwentong coffee shop lang naman ang usapan, meron kaming nakilalang isang cafe owner sa may bandang Cavite po na meron siyang heartwarming story of his own to share. Ako po ang inyong host, Aga Mula, para sa Bida Kayo kay Aga.
Itong lalaki na to, nagtutulog-tulugan kasi ayaw kanyang tulungan. Hindi siya gentleman. Hoy, Gising, tumayo ka dyan.
Ha? Dok, may pag-asa ba itong maayos ng mukha ko?
Malaki. Malaki!
Ibig mo sabihin, Dok, malaki ang pag-asang maayos ang mukha ko.
Hindi, malaki yung gagasusin mo para sa mukhang yan.
Kakain kayo in 30 minutes, finish or not finish, pass your plates, okay?
This And we are now back here on Mata ng Agila International. The World Health Organization is convening its expert committee on monkeypox to determine whether the current outbreak constitutes a public health emergency of international concern, its highest level of alert. The emergency committee will assess epidemiological indicators as the situation has worsened in recent weeks. According to U.S. CDC figures, there are more than 14,500 cases now reported in 70 countries. WHO Director Tedros Adhanom says keeping the public informed will save more lives.
One of the most powerful tools we have against monkeypox is information. The more information people at risk of monkeypox have, the more they're able to protect themselves.
WHO's lead expert on monkeypox mentions those most likely to get infected by the disease.
At the moment, we are seeing a very mixed pattern of transmission in some parts of the world, such as parts of Africa, West and Central Africa. But in other countries all around the world, 99% of cases reported are among men. So it is men who are at risk right now, not all men. 98% of those that are reported are among men who have sex with men, and primarily those who have multiple recent anonymous or new partners.
U.S. President Joe Biden warns that climate change is clearly endangering the nation as he outlines new executive action aimed at tackling global warming.
As president, I have a responsibility to act with urgency and resolve when our nation faces clear and present dangers. And that's what climate change is about. It is literally, not figuratively, a clear and present danger. The health of our citizens and our communities is literally at stake.
Biden's administration said Tuesday that record-breaking temperatures in Europe showed the need to act on climate change and promised to do its part despite judicial and legislative setbacks. The U.S., in a UN submission last year under the Paris Accords, said it would reduce emissions by 50 to 52% by 2030 from 2005 levels.
Rome and 13 other Italian cities are on red alert in preparation for extreme heat. In the Italian capital, the temperature reached over 40 degrees Celsius. Residents say they can feel the heat more than in previous years and have come to the realization that altogether people must try to have a little more respect for the planet and be a little more far-sighted. They say instead of always thinking of their own selves, people should try to protect what's left, hoping that the situation can be fixed. They admit that the path people have taken is not the right one.
The French government urges citizens to save energy in the face of record high oil and gas prices. This includes unplugging their Wi-Fi routers when heading off on holiday. French government spokesperson Olivier Véran says there are no small gestures in saving collectively energy that will be used next fall and winter. Véran encourages citizens to unplug as many devices or appliances as possible to stop them from continuing to consume energy. He mentions in particular that people unplug their Wi-Fi. He also reminds them to lower the air conditioning a little now than the temperatures are going to decrease, saying it is also a move that works. Turning the lights off when not in use, he says, is very helpful as well. Véran says these daily gestures have a very strong impact on reducing energy consumption.
An elderly couple have been burned to death in their car while trying to escape the wildfires raging in the Portuguese region of Mursa. According to residents trying to escape, the forests are not very accessible for rescue teams and that more access roads could be built. Some say these are painful days where both the firefighters and the people are helpless. Residents say that although fatigue is taking over, the adrenaline of saving what belongs to them is even greater and keeps them going. 8 other fires are sweeping across the country.
Russia has resumed pumping gas through its biggest pipeline to Europe after a 10-day outage, dispelling some of Europe's immediate supply fears, but not enough to end the threat of rationing to cope with potential winter shortages. Supplies via Nord Stream 1, which runs under the Baltic Sea to Germany, were halted for maintenance on July 11. However, even before that outage, gas flows had been cut to 40% of the pipeline's capacity in a dispute prompted by Russia's conflict with Ukraine. Thursday's flows were back at that 40% capacity level. Nord Stream figures showed a day after Russian President Vladimir Putin warned that flows could be reduced further or even stopped. The resumption of Nord Stream supplies at levels that remain well below the pipeline's capacity means Germany, which is particularly reliant on Russian fuel, and other European economies are still struggling to find enough gas for winter. Now, in a positive development for markets, the euro rebounds as Nord Stream 1 flow resumes from Russia. The euro gained 0.42% to $1.02215, blowing back most of its sizable retreat from Wednesday, the highest since July 6. WTI crude oil also fell 4.85% in response to around $95. WTI has significant support around $94 per oil barrel. Meanwhile, the dollar is also strengthening and stocks are pulling back slightly.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the U.S. and U.K. want to intensify the Russia-Ukraine conflict into a larger confrontation between Moscow and members of the European Union. In an exclusive interview with RT News, Lavrov made this observation, claiming the U.S. and Britain were acting to their own advantage in the conflict between Russia and the EU because the economies of the bloc's members are bearing the brunt of the sanctions.
Tens of thousands of kilometers from the American shores, they were bombing these countries, leveling, razing to the ground all these cities. And no one in Europe even said how bad it is. And that's right. And in our case, it's different. It's an actual threat, not some made-up threat to spread your imperialistic tentacles over the ocean. And we've been saying that for years. Don't turn Ukraine into anti-Russia. Don't put NATO into there to create direct military threat to our security.
Lavrov reasoned out the Western governments are keeping Ukraine from any constructive steps towards a peace settlement. He also stressed that Ukraine is not just being pumped with weapons, but its citizens are forced to use these weapons in an increasingly riskier way. The minister explained that the U.S. and U.K. are playing a very dangerous game. He said the two countries do not understand it themselves, pointing out that now a lot of people in Europe are starting to understand the situation in Russia and in Ukraine.
The next video contains sensitive scenes. Viewer discretion is advised. 4 people were killed on the spot, while 1 person was injured in a shocking ambulance crash in Karnataka's Udupi district. The crash, captured in a CCTV camera, shows the ambulance losing control on the wet road and ramming into the Shirur toll gate. The ambulance was carrying 8 people and was said to be on its way to Udupi when it aquaplaned on the wet road after the tires lost traction. Aquaplaning happens when the tire tread can no longer dissipate water, leading to loss of control. According to authorities, a patient, 2 medical attendants, and a toll booth employee were killed. The injured driver was taken immediately to the hospital.
UN Commissioner for Human Rights Michelle Bachelet expresses her concern about the growth of anti-rights movements in Peru in an atmosphere of political polarization. She says polarization has deepened in recent months, and there are worrying signs that anti-rights movements are gaining ground. Bachelet, at a final press conference after her 3-day official visit to Peru, also urges the fight against the disappearance of women, domestic violence, and sexual discrimination. She warns that discrimination and violence may be exacerbated during the local and regional elections in October.
A protest against high fuel prices and the rising cost of living continues in Panama for 2 weeks. People walk along the Pan American Highway east of the Central American country as indigenous Kuna people block the bridge over Lake Bayano. After union leaders consulted grassroots supporters on the deal announced Sunday, it was decided that the protest continue. Demonstrators say they are fighting for the future for their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. The protests have led to shortages of fuel and food in some areas.
Mali is expelling the spokesman of the UN's peacekeeping force in the country over posts he made on Twitter, the foreign ministry said. MINUSMA spokesman Olivier Salgado has been given 72 hours to leave over tendentious and unacceptable posts he made concerning a controversy involving Ivorian troops, it said in a statement received by AFP. The expulsion comes amid mounting friction between Mali's ruling military and international partners supporting the country's fight against jihadists. The issue over Salgado, a French national, relates to 49 troops from Ivory Coast who were detained after landing at Bamako Airport on July 10. The authorities have accused the troops of being mercenaries. But Ivory Coast says they were sent to provide a support role for the peacekeeping mission under a routine rotation. Countries that provide contingents to MINUSMA commonly bring in national support elements, or NSEs, to help with supplies and other backup functions. According to Mali's version of events, the troops had no mission orders or any authorization to enter the country. The foreign ministry accused Salgado of Twitter posts declaring without any proof that the Malian authorities had been previously informed of their arrival.
Cette mesure fait suite à la série de publications tendancieuses et inacceptables de l'intéressé sur le réseau social Twitter déclarant sans aucune preuve que les autorités maliennes auraient été préalablement informées de l'arrivée des 49 militaires ivoiriens par vol civil à l'aéroport international président Modibo Keïta, Sénou, le dimanche 10 juillet 2022.
The peacekeeping mission had been asked to provide evidence to support Salgado's assertions, but gave no reply. The UN Secretary General's deputy spokesman Farhan Haq said the UN deeply regretted the Malian decision. He said the doctrine of persona non grata does not apply to United Nations personnel and is contrary to obligations under the Charter of the UN. On the other hand, some people in Mali support the government's decision to expel the spokesman of the UN's peacekeeping force over posts he made on Twitter.
Dans un contexte aussi délicat, aussi difficile, si un porte-parole se met à parler comme un activiste, il va de soi qu'il soit mis sur les droits chemins, notamment les mettre.
Up next, Chinese tech company Baidu unveils its latest autonomous electric vehicle. Elon Musk's Tesla sells 75% of its Bitcoin holdings. And Rolling Stones thrill the audience in France's Lyon. Stay tuned. Mata ng Agila International will be right back.
Province of Bohol, we produced the majority of the products because of our terrain. We focused on the food security for the Boholano, like rice, corn, root crops.
I want to tell to the whole world that we Filipinos exist in the chocolate world.
As much as possible, we wanted our guests to stay and enjoy the facilities that we have here. Yes, that's right.
So that they won't go out.
Yeah, it's a one-stop shop already.
Wala pang masyadong foreigners, pero yung local natin talagang umaano sila. Nag-travel talaga ang locals natin.
Open for Business is in Bohol, and Bohol is open for business!
Open for Business with Cesar Vallejos, Sunday, 9 p.m.
Ito ang Net25 Primetime News. Matatag, matapang, matapat, kasama sina Alex Santos, Emma Tiglao at Vic De Leon Lima. Mata ng Agila. Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 6 ng gabi sa Net25.
Itong lalaki na to, nagtutulog-tulugan kasi ayaw kanyang tulungan. Hindi siya gentleman. Hoy, Gising, tumayo ka dyan.
Dok, may pag-asa ba itong maayos ng mukha ko?
Malaki. Malaki!
Ibig mo sabihin, Dok, malaki ang pag-asang maayos ang mukha ko.
Hindi, malaki yung kasusin mo para sa mukhang yan.
Kakain kayo in 30 minutes, finish or not finish, pass your plates, okay?
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. Trips to museums, reading and learning activities at the library, and prizes for families. These are just some of the ways Washington, D.C. encourages kids to participate in its Discover Summer program this year. Jessica Bautista tells us more.
Families of the U.S. Capitol are encouraged to take advantage of the D.C. Public Library or DCPL's Discover Summer program. The program includes free museum days and other opportunities to learn at home and in the community. Mayor of D.C. Muriel Bowser says in D.C., residents are surrounded with opportunities to learn. She encourages especially the young to take advantage of these opportunities. She reminds residents that aside from all the free museums that the district has, the library is also free. The Discover Summer program promotes reading and exploration of DC using activities involving different literacy forms. The program highlights the importance of daily reading and learning to prevent what is called the summer slide, particularly for the youngest learners. Through August 31, participants are asked to complete at least 4 activities a month. Since Discover Summer's launch in late May, more than 1,200 adults and 2,200 kids have signed up. More than 3,100 activities have been logged. For the schedule of Discover Summer Museum Days, information about prizes families can win, and to learn more about Discover Summer and the visiting times at participating libraries, visit your neighborhood library or dclibrary.org/discoversummer. Jessica Bautista, Washington, D.C. Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Artificial intelligence firm Baidu unveiled its new autonomous vehicle, which has a detachable steering wheel. It plans to use the electric car in its robo-taxi service next year. Senior Vice President Lee Zhen-yu said at a conference that the Apollo RT-6 will hit the roads without a steering wheel once Chinese authorities approve it. He boasted that the driving capability of the autonomous vehicle can match a skilled human driver with over 20 years of experience. The fully electric vehicle will cost 250,000 yuan or $36,983 per unit, compared with 480,000 yuan or almost $70,000 for the previous generation. At the Baidu World 2022 Technology Conference, Chief Executive Robin Lee said that this massive cost reduction will enable the firm to deploy tens of thousands of autonomous vehicles across China. The new vehicle also possesses autonomous Level 4 capabilities that need no human intervention, with 8 lidars and 12 cameras alongside the car. Lidars are detection systems similar to radars, which use pulse laser light rather than radio waves. The Chinese search engine giant and AI firm already runs Apollo Go, an autonomous ride-hailing service using self-driving robo-taxis, with safety staff seated in the driver or passenger seat. The service has operated over 1 million journeys across 10 Chinese cities since its launch in 2020. Baidu said in April that it had received permits to deploy robo-taxis without humans in the driving seat on open roads in Beijing. China aspires to lead autonomous driving technology globally, but lags behind the U.S. in introducing such services.
Tesla, which made waves last year when it revealed a major investment in Bitcoin, has now sold off most of its holdings of the cryptocurrency. Elon Musk's electric car firm has offloaded 75% of its Bitcoin, which was worth about $2 billion at the end of 2021. The company is backing away as the value of the cryptocurrency has plunged, falling by more than 50% just this year. Tesla said it bought traditional currency with $936 million from its Bitcoin sales. Musk cited China shutdowns as a reason, but noted that the company did not sell any Dogecoin. He also said that Tesla is certainly open to increasing its Bitcoin holdings in the future, and the recent transaction should not be taken as some verdict on Bitcoin. One Bitcoin now trades for less than $25,000. Tesla boss Musk has been among the most high-profile champions of cryptocurrency, with his pronouncements on social media often driving significant trading activity. Following a lengthy legal battle, UK-based luxury brand Manolo Blahnik has won the right to use its name in China. The shoemaker company is named after its Spanish founder, Manolo Blahnik. In a statement, it said it had won its case at the Supreme People's Court of China, which is the country's highest court. The company's chief executive, Christina Blahnik, who is the founder's niece, said this ruling was a meaningful victory for her uncle, her family, and her team. The high-end shoemaker has not operated in China for over 20 years after a local businessman trademarked its name. Manolo Blahnik's signature stilettos were made famous by celebrity customers and appearances in many popular TV series.
The legendary Rolling Stones, on a European tour for their 60 years of existence, braved the furnace of Grupama Stadium to offer a farewell show to their Leon fans. Mick Jagger greeted the nearly 50,000 thrilled fans despite a mercury displaying 36 degrees at the beginning of the concert. The first notes of the rock band were those of a moving tribute to the original drummer of the Stones, Charlie Watts, who died last year, with archive images broadcast on the screens of the gigantic stage. Jagger was visibly very well recovered from his COVID of mid-June and still as tonic in his immutable gestures. The famous rock grandpa has ginned classics and hits Street Fighting Man, Tumbling Dice, Angie, Jumping Jack Flash, Start Me Up. But the magic really worked when he belted out the lyrics to the You Can't Always Get What You Want anthem.
Now let's take a look at what happened on this day in history. In 1960, Sirimavo Bandaranaike became the world's first female prime minister. Taking office in Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, she served 3 terms as prime minister and 2 times as the chief executive. Her government nationalized various economic enterprises and enforced a law making Sinhalese the sole official language of Sri Lanka. In 1983, Earth set a new record for the coldest temperature ever directly recorded. Measured at Vostok Station, Antarctica, the temperature reached negative 89.2 degrees Celsius or negative 128.6 degrees Fahrenheit. And in 2007, the 7th and final Harry Potter book was released. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows had an initial print run of 12 million copies in the United States alone. Overall, the series has sold over 400 million copies and been translated into more than 60 languages.
rounding off tonight's broadcast is a quote from my personal character favorite, Eeyore, a fictional character in the Winnie the Pooh books. The nicest thing about the rain is that it always stops eventually.
Everything ends. It's
Good or
sad.
bad.
Yeah. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I'm CJ Hero.
And I'm Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.